Realism and Symbolism. Realism. Realism in the visual arts and literature is a movement that began in France in the mid-19th century. Realistic artists aim to present everyday characters, situations, dilemmas and facts as they are or in a realistic way. Realism began as a reaction to Romanticism, where subjects were treated in an idealistic way. Realists have tended to move away from theatrical drama and classical forms of art in order to introduce mundane or realistic themes. American realism was an art movement active in literature, photography, and painting from 1880 to 1940 in the United States. Symbolism. It is a trend that manifests itself in literature and visual arts at the end of the 19th century. It originated in the 1880s among French poets who developed an idealistic genre of poetry in reaction to naturalism and realism. The Symbolists drew inspiration from the mid-century poems and critical writings of Charles Baudelaire and the early works of Edgar Allen Poe. Symbolism in art is separate but related to the literary movement and has its roots in Romantic art of the early 19th century. There are many reasons why symbolism spread rapidly in intellectual circles and found adherents throughout Europe. Above all, symbolist images of the late 19th century were a reaction to the effects of urbanization and materialism that manifested in the later stages of the Industrial Revolution. In terms of the topics covered, symbolism developed as a movement against Impressionism, and Naturalism. He revived the mysticism and idealism often associated with German Romanticism. Symbolism emphasized the freedom of the artist's inner world and freed artists from the use of nature as a model and the constraints of artistic conventions. Symbolism is a philosophy about the content of art rather than saying how to make an art in practice. For this reason, it has developed in a wide range of different styles. From variations of academic art to the brink of abstraction, symbolism is as much about creating a mood as it is about iconography. Often the meaning of his works is immanent or deliberately obscured. Symbolism uses symbols to express an allegorical meaning. Symbolist painters took these symbols, which constitute the visual language of the soul, from mythology and imaginary images. Symbolists believed that art should deal with more absolute truths that can only be accessed indirectly, rather than everyday truths. When they painted scenes from nature, human activities, and real-world phenomena in this way, they did so in a highly metaphorical and implicit way. And the symbols they used were not familiar symbols of conventional iconography but largely personal, subjective, and ambiguous references. Symbolism spread over a wide geography. He was in great affinity with the aestheticism movement. Those of the pre-Raphaelite movement were contemporaries of the early symbolists and had much in common with them. Symbolism, on the other hand, had a great indirect influence on Expressionism and Surrealism. Some symbolist visual artists influenced the Art Nouveau and Nabis movements.